how are you all? It's Rod Fleming here in the sunny Philippines. Fit like ya den. This is a slightly different name. This one is about a very, very nasty undercurrent in the US culture. One which isn't really much of an issue in the UK, or for that matter elsewhere, but within America, or the USican rather, it's really horrible, and it needs to be, it needs to be grubbed out, because frankly, this attitude, the attitude that is behind this, that this story illustrates, is holding you back. It is stopping USican from, it's going to destroy USican in the end. It will destroy you. It will rip you apart. And that issue is racism. So, what has brought this to the ear of the mighty Rod, Rod the God, as I have been called recently, much to my great amusement. Anyway, they didn't mean it nicely, but that made it even funnier. Anyway, this is about the Disney live-action version of Snaa Whect, Snaa Whect. And what is there about the Disney version of Snaa Whect that has so upset people? And the answer to that is that, well, there's two answers. First of all, the dwarves have disappeared, right? So we're going to leave that outside and we'll deal with that later. And they've just been replaced by what looked like a ramshackle bunch of, walk-ons, bit part actors. It seems strange because there is certainly no shortage of dwarves in Hollywood. Leaving that aside, you would normally think they'd be just let's hire the dwarves, diversity hires. Let's get lots of dwarves. Great, let's get a whole bloody lot of dwarves. Never mind. There is no explaining USicans. Anyway, the real problem, the one that has caused the real shit to hit the fan, is that cast as Snaa Whect is a lady called, a 21-year-old young woman, actress called Rachel Zegler. Or Zegler, I'm not quite sure. I would probably say Zegler. And now, she actually comes from Hackensack in New Jersey, just to let you know how crazy all this is. And her father is Polish. Now, I know a lot of Polish people, and they're pretty bloody white, I've got to tell you. And her mother is of Colombian descent, and, Colombians are essentially, excuse the dog outside, the Colombians are essentially 80% Spanish blood, so they're white. Yeah, and this is hints on the problem that's going to follow. So the big row has, oh my God, she's not whiter than white. She's not whitey, 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 white. Now, there's a problem because in the USican, white seems to refer to this category of people who are basically like me, and we are, you might call us Scando-Germanic. We have this very, very fair skin, which is no help in the sunshine, by the way. We have blonde hair, and this is all real and natural, by the way. I don't dye my hair. I used to, but I don't anymore. It just went back to being blonde. And blue eyes, right? Blue eyes, rightly bloodshot, but still blue. Okay? And that's the only people who are white. Oh my God, and you have to be Protestant as well, by the way, in order to qualify as white. That's the way it goes. It's just disgusting. And Rachel Zegler is definitely white. But she's not one of those. She's got slightly matte skin, sallow skin, that's the word in English. She has brown eyes and black hair. There's no shortage of brown-haired, black-haired, brown-eyed Europeans. My goodness. And they're all white. Go to Spain. There's loads of them. There's nothing even slightly unusual about this. And to say that, oh my God, this person's not whiter than white. Not white. Oh, not white. Oh, not white. Oh my God, not white. Oh, I can't have that. It's an excuse for fucking crap. The usual USican crap. Ziegler's white. There's no doubt about that. And from a European point of view, understand this, USicans, we don't have the kind of crap that you have in your past, which you completely fucked up. We didn't have a civil war which was tragic and which cost the lives of 650,000 men. More men than have died in all of America's, or USica's, subsequent wars. More. Seriously. Died to free slaves. To free black people. It's an interesting point, and some black people ought to remember that. And they were nearly all white men. Leaving that aside, we didn't have that history. As far as we're concerned, if you're not obviously black, or obviously Asian, then you're white. That's it. We're Europeans. We have all of this. We have Mediterraneans. We have Eastern Europeans. We call them Slavs sometimes. We have Western Europeans. They're the bloody Irish, you know, and people like me are just troublemakers. Awful. Awful, dreadful troublemakers. Anyway, leaving us aside. And you've got the English. Oh my God. Well, the less said about the English, the better, I suppose. But they're all white. Norwegians, yes, you're white too. Swedes, you know, as a matter of fact, there is a very large number of Swedes who are small, dark, swarthy, with very dark brown eyes. Guess what? They're still Swedish, and they're still white. No, and I'm not talking about the immigrants that the stupid fools let in. These are original Swedes. They've been Swedes for thousands of years. Well, not individually, you understand, you know what I mean, but collectively speaking. So, what this whole nonsense with Rachel Zegler is actually pointing up is this vicious, nasty undercurrent of a belief which is still current in the United States, that one drop of non-white blood means that you're coloured, or whatever you're going to call us. I don't care. Nobody cares. Nobody else cares. Nobody outside the 4% zone gives a monkey's what you think anyway. So, you know, get over yourselves and stop crucifying this poor lassie who's just doing her job, and she's good at it. She's a good actress, you know. And one of the funny things is that Rachel Zegler actually looks more like the original Disney Snow White than, you know, most women do, to be honest with you. She's got that kind of, you know, heart-shaped face, and it's remarkable how much she does actually resemble Snow White. So what's the problem? The problem is her skin isn't perfectly white. You know, it's not, well, I mean, maybe they don't even think I'm white. It's possible, you know. I mean, they're stupid enough. It's not quite as white as I am. When they met my ex-wife, they would have said, they would be calling her black. She's as white as I am. English, born and bred. You know? An English rose. And because her skin is a little darker. No. Oh my God, she's not whiter than white. Oh my God, she's not. Oh, get the cross and get the burning tools. You're vile. You're utterly vile, you people. So what is it actually about it? Now, Snow White is actually a very old story. It was collected by the Brothers Grimm sometime when because the Brothers Grimm, to let you explain, were actually amongst the very first true ethnographers operating in Europe. And although the stories were related as children's stories, many of the sources were not actually kids' stories. They were adult folklore. They were mythology. You know, I mean, they put them into kids' form because they were selling it and made money. You know, good, but they were really amongst the very first European ethnographers. And they spent a lot of time working on these stories to try and make them accurate to the way that they were told to them, which is very much a part of ethnographic discipline these days. When I was doing my masters, for some very strange reason, I was in amongst the ethnographers. Although I wasn't studying ethnography, I had a space, and it was right next to the ethnographers, and it was like, but these are interesting people, you know, and I learned a hell of a lot, because in fact ethnography has always interested me, and in a way I think I was more interested after that than before, but that's beside the point. The ethnographers today spend an awful lot of time making sure that their own voices are dialed out. You know, they're not actually influencing them at all. Whereas if you go back to, for example, when Romans were collecting stories, Greek stories, they absolutely just changed them to suit themselves. You know, and that made quite a big difference. Leaving that aside, it does appear, or at least there's a significant body of thought that says that Snow White is actually based on a real story. Now, support for that comes from the fact that there are versions of Snow White in at least a dozen different cultures, including the Germanic one, obviously, where the Brothers Grimm were working. But many other. By the way, the Grimms tended to sort of dial down the nastiness of their stories. Some of these are very dark, you know, very, very dark. But they were really adult stories. They weren't really. Other than that, they were pretty accurate. Anyway, there's at least 12 different versions, slightly different versions of the same story extant in Europe in different cultures, different languages, which tends to suggest that this is quite old, and it's kind of, these stories kind of spread by osmosis, you know, especially in non-literate cultures. And you have to remember that until, you know, when Gutenberg came along, 15th century, invented printing, not many people could read, and an awful lot of the stories that came down to us were originally oral traditions. And they weren't written down until people like the Brothers Grimm came along and said, oh, "Okay, well, that's a good one." And you said, "And she what? What, an apple? Oh, really? Wow, good stuff. Absolutely great stuff, that, eh? That one will sell." That's how they were. The fact that there are so many suggests there was probably an original. And the one that has been proposed by the German historian Eckhard Sander in a 1994 book. And Sander, to be fair, he has written a lot about this, and he's well respected. And he published research in a book called Sneewitchen, Märchen oder Wahrheit. And please, any German speakers out there, sorry. I'm really sorry. Ein lokaler Bezug zum Kellerwald, and which means Snow White, fairy tale or truth, a local reference to the Kellerwald, which is a region in Germany. Now, he suggests that this very popular fairy tale or myth, it's really a myth, actually roots in the life of a person called Margaretta von Waldeck. And I've got a picture of Margaretta that I'll just put up here so you can see her. A very beautiful woman, obviously, of course. White and white. We'll get to that. So, this one, you know, a lot of people have criticised Sander for this seeming leap, but my own experience suggests that when you've got a lot of versions of the same thing, then you should be looking for an original. And the original is quite often actually real. I mean, it might not be quite the same. And a good parallel would be in the flood myths. I mean, there's loads of flood myths. There are loads of flood myths. And we actually know, Bob Ballard, the oceanographer and oceanic archaeologist, has posited that when the Black Sea flooded, we know that it was originally a large, low-lying valley. It was lower than the sea level. But when that flooded, that many people were forced to leave their homes. I mean, it didn't flood like overnight, you know, it took years. And that might well be the origin of all these stories of floods. So, you know, looking at all the different ones, like the Sumerian ones, the Akkadian ones, the Northern Indian ones, and of course the Judeo-Christian ones, and we look at that and we say, well, actually maybe this is all referring to a real event. Now, we can't prove it, but, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, smoking gun. So anyway, this story of Margaretta. Now, the first thing to understand about Margaretta is that she was a princess. Okay? She was a real princess. I mean, she was a no kidding real princess. She was actually, Margaretta was born in 1533, and she was the daughter of Count Philip IV von Waldeck and Margaretta von Ostfriesland. Margaret of East Frisia. At the castle Friedrichstein in Wildungen, now known as Bad Wildungen. Sorry, all doing all this German cracks me up, you know. Margaretta was only 4 years old when her mother passed away, and 6 years old when her father married her stepmother, Katharina von Hatzfeld. Okay, so Katharina von Hatzfeld is almost certainly the Wicked Witch, you know, the wicked stepmother in Snow White. According to the home chronicles in the city archives of Bad Wildungen, Margaretta was of extraordinary beauty. I mean, she was more than princess beautiful, you know. And at the age of 16, she was sent to the court of Queen Maria von Ungarn, Mary of Austria, in Brussels, a state of the Holy Roman Empire. Maria von Ungarn was the governor of the Habsburg Netherlands and the younger sister of the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. Right? Now, that made her a courtier. strictly a courtier. But, you know, nobody ever bothers with these gender things anymore. In here at least. Now, at the court of Brussels, she was Protestant. Protestant Margaretta was romantically pursued by several high-ranking Catholic personalities, such as Lamoral, Count of Egmont, and the future Philip II of Spain. That's the one that named the Philippines, where I am now. Right? Now, Crown Prince Philip II, however, was already engaged to marry the 11 years older Queen Mary I of England, otherwise known as Bloody Mary. After Margaretta's health took a turn for the worse, she passed away on March 15, 1554 at the age of 21 years. And the home chronicles of Waldeck indicate that Margaretta was probably poisoned. Like I say, they liked it. The poison arsenic, commonly used in the Middle Ages, would explain the trembling handwriting of her will. Arsenic is a metallic poison, and it attacks the nervous system, muscular nervous control of the muscles. It's really particularly nasty, and it's a slow-acting poison. It takes a long time to kill you. So it's not like cyanide. You know, cyanide will just knock you down. That's it. You're dead. But arsenic, normally poisoning by arsenic takes a long time. And which is why, by the way, in modern cases, it's very rarely done now, but in modern cases of arsenic poisoning, they always look for someone close to the poisoned. His wife, his mum, somebody like that who's very close to him. Somebody who actually could, you know, introduce arsenic into his diet or her diet, basically on a daily basis for several months, because that's what you need to do to kill somebody with arsenic. You know, it has terrible effects, but it doesn't kill you quickly. So, what we have here is a picture of how a real person, almost certainly was actually the model for Snow White. So where does the Snow White come in? What's the whiter than white? Now if you look at the pictures which I'll put up of Margaretta, she wasn't that white. I mean, she's normal European white, you know. It wasn't a big deal, because it wasn't a big deal. And what people, particularly in America, USican, what people there do not understand, and this has been one that we've had regularly, is that white is not associated with race in Europe, or at least it wasn't until very recently. It just isn't. We don't, you know, Mediterraneans, Norwegians, I mean, they're all just white, you know. You know, unless you're observably black or Asian, you're white. What colour of skin is associated with is class, not race, class. Rich people didn't have to go out into the fields and work. If you go out into the fields and work, you will get a tan. Even somebody like me will end up with something approaching a tan. Will end up with something, you know, that kind of resembles a tan. I mean, here it's the sun actually burns here, so I can't really go out in it. Plus, I've had skin cancer, so I'm not doing that again. But even someone like me will take a tan, you know, in the fields, out in the fields. I worked in agriculture for years. Yeah, I'm a pretty tanned person at that time. But if you're always indoors, if you don't go in the sun, and you don't have to work. And remember that we're talking about a period here where nearly all work was agricultural work. You were out in the fields. It's not like the modern world where nearly all work is actually indoors. And that's been the case since the 19th century and the rise of factory culture. Now it's office culture, but people are inside all the time. So it doesn't have the same connotation. So the importance of Snow White being whiter than white is not that Snow White was, you know, more Caucasian than Caucasian. It was that Snow White was a noble. She was a princess. She was a great lady. She was a member of nobility. And therefore she was white. And that's what this is all about. But of course, USicans are, because you have this, you know, this, it's actually deeply sick obsession with skin colour. That you don't see that. You go, oh, it must be a race thing. And of course, therefore, because Rachel Zegler has this, you know, small, tiny amount of non-white blood in her veins, which is going to be very small, because like I say, her dad is pure Polish, and her mum is Colombian. And, you know, it's nuts. It's a nuts idea. And if you look at her, she's white. But it's this obsession with race that is part of the USican psyche that you have to get rid of. Now, I mean, there's a lot that Walt Disney has done, and Disney has done, Hollywood has done. I was totally against, for example, the portrayal of Cleopatra by a black woman. Cleopatra was a historical figure. We know who she was. And she wasn't black. She was Macedonian. You know, what we can definitely say about Snaa Whect, or Sneewitchen, is that she was European. And, you know, Rachel Zegler is about as European as you can get and not be born in Europe. You know, all these Western colonies, you are part of our culture. You are Europeans. Didn't you get that? And your obsession with skin colour is, I mean, frankly, it's disgusting. It's weird and it's disgusting. It's upsetting. It's one of these things that, you know, the rest of us kind of look at you and go, what? And of course, you then just to diversify a little bit, because we're all about diversity these days, aren't we? You then, through your education system, you infect other countries like Britain with these ridiculous racialist ideas that you have. You know, nobody in Britain hates blacks because they're black. Nobody. They hate blacks because they, you know, there's a cultural difference. It's not the colour, it's the culture. We don't think about skin colour. Skin colour is irrelevant to us. That's why, you know, we have got an Asian Prime Minister. Who cares? As long as he fits into the culture, we don't mind. The problem we have at the moment in Britain is with a competing culture called Islam. Now that's a different thing at all. You know, I mean, there's this movement, particularly in America, suggesting, oh, Islam, you didn't, not approving of Islam. That's racist because, you know, most people who are Islamic are brown skinned. It's absolutely pish, a ridiculous argument. You know, it's perfectly reasonable to criticise Islam and not be racist. Hmm? And unfortunately, your American ideas about race, about skin colour, have been infiltrated into other cultures, and it's disgusting. They are utterly disgusting. The colour of a person's skin makes no fucking difference at all. I assure you this. They bleed red, and that's that. They do. I've seen it. So don't give me this shit, you know. Anyway, that's Sneewitchen, played by Rachel Zegler, and I wish her well. She's a very beautiful girl. She's a good actress. Oh, sorry, young woman. She's a good actress. And she does actually look like the original cartoon version of Snow White. You know? She looks like that. And the whiter than white is not to do with her race. It's to do with her class. And that's just, you know, something that Americans don't understand. It's to do with the fact she was nobility. She was a princess. Elizabeth I of England, right, used to cake her face with white lead every day. Why? So she looked more white and therefore more noble. It wasn't so she didn't look like a black person, for goodness sake. She obviously wasn't, and nobody would care anyway. She was a noble, therefore she had to have white skin. And you see this still in Asia. If you're white skin, you're beautiful. If you're not white skin, you're not beautiful. I mean, I think it's ridiculous myself. But there you go, that's the way it is. But it's not about race. I mean, black guys come here and the girls are all over them. I mean, there's a reason for that, and it's mythological. But they can't wait to find out if it's true, you know. But they're not going to look at a person and say, my God, you're a black, therefore I'm going to discriminate against you. They're not. It doesn't happen. America, you are weird. You are the 4%. You're the weird bucket. You're the place where all the crazy people live. You don't get that. Anyway, that's enough of that. I wish Rachel Zegler all the best. I hope she does well in it. And I'm sure she'll make a, you know, even if it's a terrible script, she'll do her best because she's a professional. And the fact that she is a white woman, just take a look at her. She's white, obviously. I mean, it couldn't be more bloody obvious. Bye-bye. I hope I've annoyed plenty of USicans now, because it is something that I take a great deal of pleasure in.